So, hey, I wanted to also create a video on John Updike's short story, A and P. And in this video, I'll probably talk about towards the end how we can mythically link A and P and Araby, because those two stories are really linked together. In fact, John Updike sort of said that, he was inspired by writing A and P by reading Araby. And John Updike is considered to be one of the great contemporary writers of American literature. He wrote for last half of the 20th century. He dies in about 2009. And basically, Updike had won every single major award for literature except for the Nobel Prize. And there was basically an argument that said if he had lived long enough, he was eventually just going to win the Nobel Prize for literature. However, given that some literary critics look at Updike as a better short story writer, and I think that A and P kind of reflects that. Again, Joyce and Updike are really good at using details. Updike is pretty funny, he's pretty humorous, and feminists hate Updike, and we can probably see that reflected in A and P, because A and P has perhaps the greatest opening line in all of literature. In walk three girls in nothing but bikinis. Right. Notice one of the quiz questions I ask is, what is an A&P? An A&P is a grocery store. It was really popular in the 1950s. And this story is kind of set in the late 1950s, early 60s, which kind of might make it a theme of it, those traditional values coming from Eisenhower's America, early 1960s America. And notice the first person we have is Sammy. And notice Sammy is a 19-year-old kid. And immediately he's sitting up there, he's ringing things up at a grocery store. And this is probably the most exciting thing you could happen for a 19-year-old kid, because in walk three girls in nothing but bikinis. And I like how he's sitting up there scanning everything. And all of a sudden, the woman starts complaining, hey, you've scanned that twice. And I like the line that Updike uses. He's like, look at this woman. She's kind of a witch. She kind of has been waiting as if I've never made a mistake before. But if you go back and read that line, it's pretty funny, right? And so Sammy, right, again, he kind of notices these three girls, and they're kind of following him around, and is kind of observing them as they walk around the grocery store. And, the question I always ask, is Sammy a pervert? Is he kind of a sexist? Because there's a line in there, right? Because as he's observing the girls, notice what he's done is he's categorizing them. One's the leader, she's the queen, the others are followers. So his mind is kind of categorizing these girls. And I love the line in there where he says, you got to wonder what goes on a girl's head. Is there just a bee that goes in that just goes bzzz? So you could argue, well, wait, is Sammy kind of a sexist and kind of a pervert? But notice, I would argue that Sammy is just kind of your normal 19-year-old male. And what 19-year-old male wouldn't notice three girls in bikinis? And notice how different the story would be if the story started out with the three guys in G-string bikinis walked in and I smiled. That story would have a totally different meaning if that was a line, right? So I think Sammy is a normal 19-year-old male, and we're stuck in a 19-year-old male's head. And so sometimes we say things in our head that we wouldn't speak out loud. So I think Sammy's a normal 19-year-old male. And then remember one of the quiz questions I asked about Stokesy. Well, who's Stokesy? Well, Stokesy is his coworker, right? He's a little bit older, 20, 22, 23, right? And it's Stokesy's kind of the pervert, right? Because he comes over in Sammy's lane. He says, oh, look at those girls. He's kind of the creepo. I'm like, dude, get back in over at your own register, right? What are you doing, kind of pervert, right? So notice, and as the girls are walking in, I think walking along the store, what are they looking for? They're looking for red herring snacks. And that is actually important because it shows that the girls come from a different class than Sammy, right? They might come from kind of the upper class. Sammy might be kind of the middle class. And as they're walking around, Updike has such great details. The way that he describes the grocery store is so spot on. I have a coworker who worked before he started teaching. He worked at a grocery store, and he said, Updike describes a grocery store perfectly. I went to Costco this weekend, and I laughed. I just couldn't stop thinking about how, Costco reminds me of Updike's description of a grocery store. Like, why do we categorize things here? I'm walking down the dog food, cereal aisle, spaghetti aisle. And again, it's a kind of a tribute to Updike's sense of humor and how great he is at using details. So the girls come in and they buy the herring snacks and they get into Sammy's line, and what I think is right, and just as they're getting ready to pay, notice the big issue comes. Lenagol comes in, and Lenagol is the manager. And Lenagol, and I asked the question, is Lenagol a jerk? Did he overreact? Because he does say, girls, this isn't the beach. And again, I love Updike and Sammy's description of Lenagol. He's the manager, right? He's kind of this crusty old man, looks like he's a religious kind of preacher, right? And I like how Sammy says, as if Lenagol has been looking around for the last several years and thought the whole time that this was the beach, right? Again, kind of Sammy's great sense of humor, Updike's great use of details. And then the question is, did Lenagol overreact? And there's kind of two different reactions. One is, no shoes, no shirt, no service, right? Are the girls dressed appropriately, right? So you could say that, what was appropriate, but then again, they're walking around, they're walking around in bikinis. I wonder if in 2024, the reaction to the story would be kind of different. And notice, as the girls leave the store, Sammy does something foolish or bold. He decides to quit. And he decides to quit. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, why does he quit? Because I sometimes think that Sammy was bored at his job. He was looking for any excuse to quit, but he does quit. But also, one could argue, did he quit because he wanted to be the hero for the girls, right? He wanted to be their hero. Yet notice, they don't even know if that he quit, that he did something for them, that he stood up for them. Because when he walks out of the grocery store, he looks up and he realizes, oh my gosh, life's going to be a little bit harder for me. And so if you think about this, I think mythically, A&P and Araby are almost the exact same story. The difference is, I would argue, one deals with love and one deals with lust, right? But that both the boy and Sammy do foolish things to impress the girls. And at the end, the ending is almost similar, right? They look up and they realize, oh my gosh, life is going to be harder now, or life is going to have changed. So, I like Updike. I like the story a lot. I hope this video kind of helps you kind of appreciate and kind of understand it. And I look forward to kind of seeing what you have as you keep working on week 3.